Oh, hey, Alice. Fancy seeing you here. You picked a good time. I'm wearing sweatpants and feeling comfortable. And we have Sayryn in the building, the one and only. How you guys doing?
Good, how are you?
Doing good. I'm glad y'all made it.
Thank you. Well, thank you for inviting us, of course.
Yeah.
We appreciate it so much.
You can catch them August 11th at Dark Matter with some other bands.
We're playing with Eve's Curse and Spirit Ritual.
Nice. I've been meaning to talk to Spirit Ritual. They're pretty cool.
Yeah.
They're a great band.
They're great. They're also really nice, so that also helps. Yeah.
I think, have you guys ever been to, what is that magic shop called? Draconis Arcanum?
No.
I'm
Is it
pretty
Nashville?
sure, yeah, it's East Side. I'm pretty sure the front man of Spirit Ritual runs that shop.
Jeff?
Oh, wow.
Maybe. That'd
Maybe.
be interesting, yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, you guys are really awesome. I caught your set at Betty's. It's
you.
really
Thank you.
unique what y'all are doing. You don't see that every day. So I thought it was a
Thank
really
you.
good
We
fit
appreciate
with
it.
Cassette Stress, actually. That was a good bill.
Yeah. Everyone was super cool and very, like, emo, kind of, like, dark night, which was cool, because we don't get to play with a lot of bands like that all the time, here especially. So, yeah, it was very, very fun.
Yeah, I could see you fitting well with, like, a lot of, like, dark wave bands, which I guess we don't have a lot of. But,
We love dark wave,
Yeah.
so that's like a huge compliment.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
how long have you known each other?
A while.
A long time.
Yeah.
Well, okay, we've known each other 6 years, I think.
Yeah, 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, we've lived together for 5 years. We met in college, the first week of college, completely coincidentally. I was walking to the cafeteria, and she was walking, like, 10 feet ahead of me, and then she just turned around in the spirit of being a freshman and was like, "Are you going to the caf?" And I was like, "Yeah." And then we became friends.
Aww.
So,
My outgoing phase that lasted like 1 week.
yeah. To be fair, I guess all college freshmen are like, I'm gonna be social, you know, and then it fades. But yeah.
That's cool. Were you both always interested in music?
Definitely. For me, I would say, like, I was raised, like, learning classical piano from when I was pretty young, but I didn't get, like, super passionate about it until I was, like, maybe 12, and I started, like, trying to write my own songs, and then I was like, I would like to do this for, like, as long as possible. So, yeah, it's always been, like, very therapeutic for me, and, like, I think I always knew, like, I wanted to do something related to it. So, how about you, Bryn?
Yeah. I mean, I guess similar, but definitely as a kid, like, my dad taught me my first 4 chords on the guitar, and he likes to sing. We have kind of a musical family, I guess, but no one's, like, done it professionally or anything, just kind of, like, for fun. And then, yeah, I got into singing when I was 8, and kind of went from there. Also have been trained on piano. I'm also classically trained vocally from my high school, because I went to Performing Arts High School, and then we both went to music college, and now we're here. So
That makes a lot of sense because you're both very talented. It makes sense that you come
Thank you.
from a background like that.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. So, I assume, like, classically trained, was that something that, like, parents put on you guys and then you kind of adopted it later, like found what you were interested in, or?
ooh.
That's a good question.
Well, yeah, I guess for me, like, because my mom loves classical music, so as a kid, when you're not really that interested in it, because it's, like, hard to kind of understand, I definitely feel like I didn't get it, so I was like, I don't want to listen to this, or I don't want to do this, but as I started actually being trained in that way, especially for singing, I started to understand, like, how to appreciate it, I guess, like, more just in general classical music. So then I feel like once I was in high school, I started to be able to find more stuff that I actually felt like I liked to listen to, you know, because sometimes you're, like, any genre or anything, if you don't have the thing that you like, it's not going to appeal to you, and you need to kind of find it in order to be like, oh, okay, I like this style or this version. So definitely for me, like, I remember that very, very clearly. Also, the shift was me and my mom go to the Nutcracker every year since I was like 11, and as a kid I hated it, and then in high school I didn't hate it. So that was the shift, I think, for me.
Yeah, I think for me, I would say like definitely similarly, like my mom used to play classical piano and like she was really great at it. So I think she wanted like me to try it out as a kid. And of course, like I was in like choir and stuff, and I did like jazz choir stuff at one point as well. And I think as I got older, like I learned to appreciate that more. And it was just that like I think because when you're younger and you're like learning through maybe like a curriculum, everything's thrown at you. So I think as I got like into college, I was like, oh, I like this type of like darker classical music that's more maybe cinematic or something instead of like other stuff that I can't think of right now.
Do either of y'all have any specific classical composers that y'all are more into than
Yes.
anybody?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I guess for me, Chopin, I really like. I've actually listened to the Funeral March too many times. And I also really like Stravinsky. And I'm also really into ballet, which a lot of people don't know. I can't do it for the life of me, but I really love watching it. So, you know, there's, of course, like Tchaikovsky pieces, and I think Firebird Suite, specifically, that there's a ballet to that.
It's very rare I get musicians in here that are trained in that level of where they're at, so I can't usually ask them questions like that, because I also started in classical when I was a wee young lad.
A wee one.
How about you?
I would say, yeah, I like Chopin as well. But Debussy, I don't know if I'm saying his name. I always butcher his name, but yeah, like his music is beautiful. And I think I learned one of his pieces in high school, and I was like, I really like this, and I want to like learn more of his pieces. So yeah.
Oh, also Rachmaninoff, I really like too.
Y'all both said Chopin. What is it about Chopin that y'all think y'all really like?
I don't know if there's like a way to describe it, I guess.
I think it's hard.
It's definitely hard to like.
Yeah.
It's a good question
That's
though.
one of the great things about classical composers is that it's not like a band with a genre.
Right.
You know, you're not gonna say I like this, so I like all these other dudes. It's
Right.
very much, you know, like with me, Vivaldi, I like because I'm into very dark things.
Mm-hmm.
But the reason I'm not into high major things is because they end up being campy.
Okay. Yeah.
Vivaldi does that without being campy to me. He can really
can see that.
uplift, and it's still very serious. You know, or that, you know, that's how I take it. But that's just an example. I wanted y'all to expand on y'all's feelings on Chopin.
I feel like sometimes definitely the dramatic kind of like nature of, I guess, the piece itself, like I feel like it's really easy for me to feel exactly what's going on, you know, which I think is also very interesting about classical music, is that you don't have words and you don't have like a clear, like, unless you know what the story is, like that goes along with the song, like you don't have anything to tell you specifically what's going on. So like it, you know, when you can feel something very like specifically and just intensely from not having any of those things, it's like, whoa, this is like insane. It's definitely more meaningful, I think.
It's hard to base a foundation off Symphony Number 5.
Yeah.
The title, you know,
Yeah.
C, you know.
Exactly.
So yeah, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, your art comes from like a very real place, like that comes through when you play, and I think that's cool, having the background that you do, and then like being a real artist with something to say. Like it makes for an interesting thing. I'm definitely looking forward to this Dark Matter show. Be there, Alice. That's tomorrow. When this goes up, it'll be tomorrow. Be it dark matter. Do it.
Yes, please.
Yes, do it.
We would love to see you. And you know what? Let us know if you listened or watched this and, you know,
Come
you
up to
decided
us and
come.
say hi.
Yeah, you decided to come. We'll love you more.
Were either of you raised religiously?
I was. Like, yeah, I definitely was. Would you like me to elaborate?
I would love that.
So I was raised, like, pretty Catholic. Like Roman Catholic, and yeah, like I went to church every Sunday kind of thing, and like participated in like, you know, Christmas, Easter, and like some in between holidays that I cannot remember now. But yeah, like I stopped going often like in high school, but I used to be like pretty Catholic.
Is your family still Catholic?
My father is, but my mom is not religious from what I know. Yeah, and like it's definitely like an important part of his life. I think I also, when I look back on it, like there were some values I learned that, like, you know, I still keep in my heart and everything, but it's just not for me.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with it.
The reason I ask is there's a lot of like dark gothic elements to y'all's image and your music, and I just those two things usually go hand in hand. Speaking from experience, I was also raised very religiously. All of my family is Jehovah's Witnesses, and I was a Jehovah's Witness till I was 18. So I feel you on that. I
do notice that goth tends to often have a lot of Catholic background.
Yeah.
I was also raised Catholic.
Did you grow up with religion in the house?
I did. Different religion, though. Well, okay, so my family is not religious, but I'm actually, technically the family is interfaith. So my mom she's definitely not at all anything now, but like she was raised Catholic, and my dad and my whole dad's family is Jewish. So I, at a very, very young age, was very, very drawn to Judaism, and I don't say like half or anything because I am Jewish, also as bat mitzvahed, so that's my religion of choice. You know, so I know there's a whole thing people think about being paternal and stuff like that, but you know, if you don't think that I'm a real Jew, then you can go fuck yourself. That's my answer.
Oh, interesting. So it's like, at least for some people, it's like,
traditionally speaking, that the Jewish faith or race, or that's that weird blended line, is considered to pass through the mothers.
Interesting.
If your mother has to be Jewish for you to be Jewish, according to, you know.
That's a side of Judaism I'm not very familiar with.
It's also from a religion that deems that no matter if you convert or not, you're still not an actual chosen one like they are. So, you know, I take all that kind of stuff with a grain of salt.
Yeah, I guess there's probably different like sects and viewpoints on it, like depending on probably denominations, a lot like Christianity, I would assume.
Well, so the thing is, like, if you are very, very, like, you know, Orthodox, like, very traditional religiously, definitely they would view anyone who's even Reform. So it's not even just, like, if your mother's not Jewish, but, like, if you're even Reform and you don't, like, conform to their practicing ways, then they don't even consider you Jewish.
Gotcha.
So when you think of that it's like, all right, well, I'm not Orthodox or conservative in that way, so it's like, that doesn't really even apply to me. And so a lot of people who fall under the less strict ways of practicing, it's like, you know, oh, it doesn't really matter. Also because of the fact that it is an ethno-religion, so it's not just your religious faith or anything. It's like,
cultural
where
aspects
you're from.
to it too.
Yeah.
I
So
don't think I've ever heard that term, ethno-religion.
I'm glad you added that to our vocabulary. Yeah.
Ethno-religion.
yeah. So it's like one of those things where you can just be religious, so you can convert, or someone in your line can have converted, but also, like, you know, you can be also from a region, like, historically, where your people are from, that's who those people were. So, you know, like, in my literal DNA test, it says Ashkenazi Jew. So it's not something that I can just be like, yeah, that's not there, you know. So it's a very, like, controversial kind of topic, but I feel like anyone who's not an ass will, kind of just like understand that. Also, I will say with the conversion thing, it is actually written in Jewish law that you cannot ask somebody if they are a convert or not, because what is considered if you're a convert is that your soul was always Jewish, you've just come back home.
Interesting.
So
that's this is actually one of my favorite subjects, so I definitely want to pick your brain about it some more. I'm fascinated with the Torah.
Okay.
I'm like,
Yeah.
really, my friend Danny, he studies Hebrew. He's been on the show a few times. And he's really opened my mind to the Torah. So being raised like devoutly Christian, and then getting away from it, like the Bible kind of, like religion in general just kind of like turned me off, like, like when I was 18, I was like pretty staunchly atheist for a long time. And then like coming to find scripture again later in life and like hearing other things, like I understand, oh, this was never supposed to be a history book. Like the rabbis that wrote that were writing a coded book full of magic, and it's very powerful stuff if you don't think it like literally happened, like exactly that way.
Yeah, well, I think it's just a book of like stories about morals and like what you should or shouldn't do in certain situations that like obviously these situations are not really applicable like in the specific way anymore, but like definitely the values are still there, and like I guess how much you devote yourself to God or to family, how you question things. It's very interesting, and yeah, there's a lot of interesting stories. I always think of the Torah as like our people's just like folk tales that have become canonized in a really mythical and like weird way.
Yeah.
So yeah, like, and there's of course like besides the Torah, like the Old Testament, there's a lot of other things that are in Jewish practice and Jewish studies that are just very, very different and kind of make the religion as a whole very different.
Yeah. You familiar with the concept of a golem?
Oh yeah, of course.
So I found out one of the things that like really blew my mind about the Torah is finding out that it is its own kind of golem. Like you're probably familiar with this, but there's a thing called chiastic literature, where it's stories told in a circle, which a lot of books in the Torah, or a lot of, I always get this confused because some people say the Torah is Genesis through Numbers, and then some people say it's the entire Old Testament. But a lot of stories in the Old Testament are circular, like they start where they end. And I do know that I don't whether you want to take it like literally or like figuratively, the whole idea is you can like trap a spirit within a narrative by making a circle. And so a lot of ancient Jewish folklore is told circularly. Like Job is one of these things. There's a few. But yeah, the idea of like binding a spirit to a narrative, not even the words on the page, but the story itself, is something that has been passed down and done a lot over the centuries. Like, for example, Alice in Wonderland. Lewis Carroll was an Oxford theologian. He definitely would have known about what I'm describing. And that Alice in Wonderland is a chiastic story. It starts where it ends. She falls asleep, she wakes up. A Wizard of Oz is like this also. There's a lot of occult writers that have derived from ancient Jewish texts this concept. I'm done with my rant now.
I don't think I've ever thought about that before, actually. But that's really interesting.
I borderline don't think people wrote it. Like, I think there's like some kind of divine intervention or aliens or something, because it's incredibly complex. It's like the people that wrote the Torah are like way beyond the intelligence that of anyone I've ever met. It's crazy. Like something else I'll get off of this in a minute, I'm sorry. But like
he's complimenting our people.
Yeah. it's fucking fascinating. Like the New Testament does some of this too. But the Greek is like you lose so much compared to like ancient Hebrew text, cuz Hebrew, the numbers are the same as the letters. So it's like when you're reading it, you're also saying the numbers. Like we could do this with English, like apply A to 1, B to 2, C to 3, but you would have to like sit there and like do the math. Whereas like if your language is also your numbers, you're just reading numbers and letters at the same time. So it's like to like know Hebrew and like to exist in that time, you wouldn't have to like sit there and decode it. You would just see the message at the same time that you're reading it, which I don't know. It's Hebrew itself is like very intelligent compared to a lot of languages.
Hebrew is very interesting. I mean, each letter is also there's like a significance for why it looks the way it does, and like each stroke of because it looks kind of like calligraphy. If you look at the letters that are printed. And I have a book at home that's literally like, oh, this, Aleph, the first letter, is like made with these brushstrokes to represent. I couldn't tell you what they are, but I could definitely just say that they like have extremely religious, biblical, like reasons why they're written that way, which is I had never thought about before either. So
interesting. I never thought about that before either. Like the way that they're actually drawn is important too.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I gotta introduce you to my friend Danny. He can read Hebrew, and it's a fucking trip. Like when he starts talking about the Torah, because there's so much hidden information that's not like surface level. Like people spend their entire lives studying it and never get everything out of it. Enough about that. What have you guys been listening to in like the last week?
A lot of things.
Ooh,
oh, God.
Definitely many things.
We have a very, very wide taste of music.
There are things we listen to where you'll be like, how does Sayryn listen to that?
Yeah, you're gonna be shocked.
Yeah.
Such as?
Well, we really like BTS.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're big K-pop fans over here.
We are. Yeah, I know we may not look like it, but we are. So, yeah.
BTS, specifically, though, like, so I have been a fan of them, for 7 years, and then I got her into them, like, a year ago.
How many of them are there?
7.
7, okay.
Yeah.
That was quick. that was fast.
I know everything, believe me.
He didn't even finish saying it. 7.
I just finished their 10-year autobiography, too. And not that I didn't know the information before that, but I'm just saying. But they have been very influential, I mean, for me, but also for us, I think, just also their story in general, like, has been, like, if you want to know about real underdog story, rags to riches, like, in a modern way, they're definitely the prime example. And still have to face a bunch of shit, that is completely unfair. So, but that's, like, one of probably the biggest, I think, shocking musicians that, like, we listen to and we hardcore love. Anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with all that. Like, they're very inspirational if, again, like, you want kind of like a real rags to riches story. And they, really had to, like, work their way up to where they are now, which is, like, very inspiring because I think definitely, like, nowadays, like, a lot of artists, like, you don't really know how they got to where they did. And sometimes, like, if you're an up-and-coming musician, I feel like you can see, like, oh, like, this person just met the right person and, like, they got really popular, but it's rarely works like that. And I think for them, they're pretty transparent about how they got to where they did. And it's honestly, like, a miracle sometimes because, like, they had to face a lot of obstacles, like, in their industry and then, like, in the West. So they're just like you can look at so much information about them, and it's really cool.
Take a lot.
Well,
Yeah.
I know
Yeah.
that, and I'm not really into it, but I know that the industry in Korea, to try to come up doing what would, in essence, what we would call a boy band here, you know, the market is there even more extreme than it was here, like say in the late 90s. You know, it's kind of like trying to be a TikTok star here now. You know,
So good luck.
Yeah.
It's like,
Well, I
you know,
guess
and a lot of
'cause-
people, and I understand a lot of people don't understand that. They're like, because most people, Americans don't really get into, in general, Asian pop of any type. You know, that's what kind of
It's growing though.
Well, that's what held
Yeah.
anime back for many years in this country. Is nobody could get over the theme songs. You know, I mean, it's the truth. It's the truth. Cowboy Bebop, prime example. When Cowboy Bebop came out, it did in one season.
Talking about Tank?
Well, I'm talking about Cowboy Bebop, the show in general.
I'm sorry.
Blew away the 30-year standing #1 anime accepted by America, which was Dragon Ball. And as
Interesting.
big as Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z and all that was, it took Cowboy Bebop one season to blow it out of the water, and it did it because it had American music playing in it.
It was very
Interesting.
they from the onset they set out to make it like an Americanized anime.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was
So-
definitely like written with Western audiences in mind.
But the idea being is that, you know, when you have an industry like that over there that's so demanding, you know, I think that kind of stuff is what it is, but I have to respect it because anytime I go to, you know, a Korean restaurant, they'll usually have a lot of that playing. You know, my stepdaughter, she's not really into K-pop, she's very into anime, but, you know, she'll sit and watch this stuff because I'll have videos from Korea playing. And, you know, I mean, some of the boy and girl bands, there's like 5 to 12 members on stage, but the crowds,
Yeah.
I've never seen crowds like that at any American rock show. I mean, it's like the
Yeah.
entire city is there.
Yeah.
And you can't really, I mean, you can dog on it all you want, but,
Do you remember that
you know.
all-girl K-pop band that Booty Gum showed us? Blackpink?
Blackpink.
Oh,
They're
Oh,
fucking
yeah.
awesome. I'm not big into that scene either. I just don't know a lot about it, but I love Blackpink. They're so
They're
cool.
badass. Yeah.
They're definitely like the one girl group, or like maybe not the one, but like they're definitely a girl group that has become way bigger in the West, which is so interesting. But there is their industry is obviously very different, and like they're called idols, like idol groups.
Yeah.
So like that's like the main format, you know, of the like very mainstream pop kind of stuff. Like there are a lot of we listen to other either bands or solo artists from Korea that are not part of the idol industry, and you can tell. And it's also there is a difference between K-pop and Korean pop for that
Okay.
very reason. So it's not run the same way, and it's kind of like presented differently. So K-pop is like the very mainstream kind of like
Gotcha.
sound, and then there's a lot of other stuff, and like there's so many other amazing artists too, like in Korea, and also just like in East and Southeast Asia. Like, I mean, everywhere pretty much
I hear
has
a
Yeah.
lot of,
Yeah.
great music.
I hear a lot of Japanese, and it's not always. She's actually expanded out of listening to a lot of themes. You know, because I'll hear her listening to a lot of stuff, and it's not really my cup of tea.
I love Japanese ska. I think
But
we've talked about this.
Yeah.
Japanese ska
Ska.
music is awesome.
But
There's a lot of. I was a big weeb in my
they're
teenage years.
very, I have to say, I mean, some of the most impressive bands that I've heard, as far as being just solid musicians, not even just circus act style stuff, but just really being solid musicians and writing solid changes and really like interesting stuff, even if vocally it's campy to me or I'm just not into it, I can still really pick up on the composition, and it's really some pretty amazing stuff, and compared to what we kind of just, pull the lever and pitch out here a lot of times on our mainstream, there's a little bit of wonder if people really don't like it that much or they're just a little bit jelly on it, because they do get crowds that look like the entire city is.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't do that here.
I can rag them all day long, but I've never packed a city.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely very interesting. I feel like once a music genre goes anywhere else in the world, it just like you can obviously tell that it's coming from a certain place, like they're taking Western music but like making it their own and putting their own like either instruments, like cultural instruments, or their own language, which will inherently sound different, obviously, phrasing things and doing anything like that, or rapping too. Rapping in Korean obviously sounds different than rapping in English, but it's very interesting how it like morphs into its own thing everywhere else in the world.
Yeah. I know a lot more about like J-pop and like Japanese ska, like I said, but I do know a little bit more about like Korean drama. Do you guys watch that?
Oh yeah.
I've seen a couple of those.
Yeah.
She may have seen more or something, but we both watched them. Yeah.
The big one for me that I really liked was Airs. You seen that?
Oh, I know what that is, but I have not seen it. It's a classic one.
It's really good.
Yeah.
I haven't seen a ton, but I liked that one a lot. There's another one too I'll probably think of here in a minute. Yeah.
Well, my first one was Boys Over Flowers.
That's it. Yeah, I've seen that too.
She's seen that. I showed it to her.
I have. That was
That's
like
good.
one of my first. Yeah.
That's crazy how many like iterations that has. Like there's a Japanese.
Oh, let me tell you.
A Chinese.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of them. I've also seen, there was one summer where there's another, what's the other show?
Mischievous Kiss or something. I think
Yeah,
that's what it's called.
yeah. There's another show, Mischievous Kiss, there's the Japanese version, and then I've seen the Korean version, I've seen the Taiwanese version, I've seen the, I think, Chinese version. The same show, but completely. Also the anime version of it too. Also Boys Over Flowers, but
That is an anime too. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, like those shows definitely will hook you in and keep you there. But they've gotten a lot better now. Boys Over Flowers, I loved it when I was like, because that was my first show I watched ever that was Korean anything, and I was like 12. So I've been around for a long time. So that was when I was 12, and I was like, I'm obsessed with this, right? Never watched any other K-drama until like high school, and then I watched other ones, and I watched Boys Over Flowers again. I was like, this is so bad. Like, this is so awful. Like,
the camera quality was like somebody's,
somebody's
hand
camcorder.
video.
Yeah.
Camcorder. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so hard segue.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think happens after we die?
Ooh.
Do you want me to go first?
Sure. I think I might have some thoughts there.
Okay.
I feel like I really don't know, like most people, and like I consider myself like, I guess like agnostic. However, like I've thought about it, and I feel like to me, the most appealing idea is that like you, I guess like reincarnate into like another living being, or like not even just, an animal or whatever, but like maybe like the trees or like whatever, or like a bird, and like I really like that idea, and it personally like resonates with me, also because I don't want to like say for sure, but my mom's side is Japanese, so like I was raised with some like Shinto Buddhist beliefs, and I don't consider myself Buddhist really, but I like those beliefs are kind of like in the culture and stuff, so I feel like I've taken some of that, and like I personally resonate with it for some reason. So I like the idea that you don't fully die, like you just spread somewhere else, or like you spread onto the earth. So that's kind of what I'm hoping is true. I don't know if it is real, but yeah.
I like that idea. There's like peace in that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not just like you like poof disappear. It's like you're helping another like living being or something. I definitely, that idea is very comforting, I think, because nobody wants to like just disappear and be like forgotten about.
If we can expand on that, where do you think we come from?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Because if it's reincarnation, is this like sorry, go ahead.
You're good. That one's difficult. I feel like maybe we do come from like another living being too, and like it doesn't need to be like another human. I mean, obviously we're all born from a human, but I also like the idea that like, yeah, like you could have been like an animal before, like a bird or whatever. A bird's an animal, but
How familiar are you with Tibetan Buddhism?
Definitely not familiar at all. Yeah.
I'm really glad to hear somebody say that. I've studied Buddhism, but I don't call myself a Buddhist, because I know many people that call themselves Buddhist and they don't.
They've never studied Buddhism.
Well, yeah. I mean, like me, I've studied it, but I'm not, because I don't practice it. That's a lot of people don't understand. I'm like,
I love that.
I've known practicing Buddhist.
That's kind of like, I know so many Christians, and I'm like,
but,
you can say that, but no, you're not.
Well, and what I mean is, as a religion is a daily practice. You know, just believing something is not a religion. You know, but it's a lot like you're saying with Tibetan, you know, Tibetan Buddhism speaks on the different realms of existence before and after, and their belief is that when you die, about 40 days later is when you actually pass on. That's why they'll chant, because if you have your loved ones to chant you past, you don't have to answer any questions about life. Otherwise, you have to answer for your life, and that determines where you fall. And you can end up becoming a demon, a deity, a god, an animal, you know, I think it's about 7 different things.
7, yeah.
Otherwise, if you pass by that, you enter a hall of a chamber of lovers, where your next parents are selected by you, and you dive into them as they make love. And that's one of the heaviest.
Tibetan Buddhism's wild.
Yeah, and when you think about the craziness of that, but then you take that off and you lay it on almost every other religion and their explanation, you're pulling just pieces out of that. You know.
What is it? The Book of the Dead?
Yeah, it's a Tibetan Book of the Dead.
Yeah.
Bryn, do you have any thoughts about the afterlife?
Yeah, I was just trying to think of what I would say. I mean, I feel like it's not like, not necessarily reincarnation, but I feel like not like completely off of what Saya said. But I guess I've always thought, because I've also been like super into science at one point in my life, and being like, oh, like, you know, the universe is like so interesting and evolution is very cool. To put that very lightly, I feel like when you die, like, I also don't have any problem with being like, oh, you're going back to the earth and you're servicing, literally in your decay, but also like every part of you is going back into the earth and into the universe, and like there's that whole thing where like energy can't be destroyed, so it's kind of like, okay, well, if, you know, my interpretation of that is not some like crazy spiritual thing, it's more just like, yeah, so you're just gonna be like chilling somewhere, like, you know, kind of like with everything being built with other things in the earth, and I also think like in terms of people, you know, besides what physically happens to you or what happens to your soul and all of that kind of thing, I feel like also whoever you kind of influence in your life, or whoever your friendships are, if you had kids, or not, or whatever your situation is, you know, part of you is going to be a part of someone else because of whatever you taught that person. and that doesn't have to be a parental figure. It can be like advice, or like this, I learned how to be respectful of something like through this other person, or I learned how to love in this specific way through this person. And or literally just like cultural things, or being nice, like stuff like that, like you do pass on.
If thought is energy and energy can't be destroyed, then people thinking of you is a manifestation of yourself.
What you reminded me of is like a piece of art that people listen to, like Chopin's, like, is eternal.
Right. Yeah.
Never dies.
Exactly. So like you are like leaving something that's not exactly tangible, but it will live forever, because also if you pass something on to someone else, then like they will inadvertently like pass it on to someone else too. And like you might not figure out like what the root of that is, but I think the thought that you can always be a part of somebody, especially someone you care about, that's very comforting. Also, because when you think about people who have passed away in your own life, then I've found comfort in thinking that those people will always be there because of whatever actions I'm taking and however I'm working to like add them into my life. So.
Yeah, it gives a certain weight to life, where it's like your impact will shape the future forever in like a positive way or a negative way. So it's like really, really strong negative examples is like you fucked up reality for everyone forever. So it's like there's consequence to it in good ways and bad ways. Yeah.
Well, I feel like that's just generational trauma.
True. Yeah.
Going around fucking up reality for everybody.
Yeah.
Like when you were saying that, I was just thinking about how that could apply like in a negative way too. Like you were talking about like being taught like how to care for someone, or like how to love. It's like you can also, like you said, generational trauma. You can be taught how to hate. You can be taught wicked things. And what we do is important, Alice. Treat every day like it's your last, and be good to people, I think, is what we should do.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Amen. But also, don't be afraid to like punch a Nazi sometimes. I think.
Sometimes that's what you got to do.
Yeah, that's
the only appropriate response.
True.
What was I gonna say? Do we have any ghost stories at the table tonight? And I guess I should clarify, when I say ghost stories, anything that's happened that you can't like readily explain with logic.
Well, I guess mine could be half and half, but I'll say it anyway, I guess. But yeah, well, one time, I luckily got to study abroad in Spain at one point, and I was like in my dorm, and it was like the first week I was there, so it was like, I could have been jet lagged, like I could have had like sleep paralysis or something, but I swear I remember waking up in the middle of the night, and there's this old woman, or seemingly old woman with like really long hair, like just like standing right next to my closet, and it was really creepy. And I did tell one of my friends about it, and she was like, oh, like, this area has, like, old buildings, so maybe it was a ghost. But that's the only thing that's ever happened to me, and I still don't really know if it was, like, sleep paralysis or if I really saw something, but that definitely stands out to me, so...
I'm a big believer. I'm a believer. Like I said, when I moved out at 18, I was very much like an atheist until I went looking for things. Like I'd never had anything weird happen to me until I sought it out. But I've since not religious, but like very spiritually minded now, just because of my experiences. So I take a lot of weight when you say that. Like there's like substance to that. Can you? How much detail can you describe this entity in?
Ooh, I feel like definitely the biggest thing that stood out to me was that she was older. And I've definitely, I think, like, I guess, like, out of the couple times I've experienced that, it's, like, usually an older person for some reason. But I would say all I remember is that she had curly hair and it was really long and she looked like she was elderly. But yeah, since I don't like personally believe in ghosts, I think I kind of like turned it off like immediately as like, oh yeah, like I think I was just like going through sleep paralysis. But
Were you also paralyzed, like you couldn't move?
I think for a little bit, and then I broke out of it, but it wasn't like for too long. And then once I broke out of it, she just like faded. But it was more like a shadow, I think, of like a person almost, and not like if you see somebody in real life. So that was interesting.
Yeah. Kind of like hazy, not in great clarity. Gotcha.
Yeah.
And so that's interesting. You were like stuck probably with fear, like stuck where you were, but then you were able to get out of that. So you didn't go back to sleep. You were able to like get up out of bed.
I think I ended up just going back to sleep after that, actually. But I just kind of like broke out of the sleep paralysis, and I was like, oh, that was interesting. And it was definitely like spooked me a little bit, and then I just kind of went back to sleep because I was like, well, I don't know what to do now.
That was interesting.
Yeah, I was like, interesting.
Interesting, scary experience.
How old were you when that happened?
I was 19. Yeah. I believe, yeah.
Bryn, do you have any weird stories?
No.
I think that's a good answer too. Some people are like, I'm sorry, I don't. And I'm like, no, I mean, I'm interested in knowing what's really going on. And I think that's a good answer too. It's the truth. So kind of on topic, kind of not. How do you... Okay, so I used to ask people if they believed in aliens, but unanimously, everyone I've ever talked to has been like, we've done 145 of these, something like that.
Wow. And pretty much everyone has been like, yeah, there's got to be life out there somewhere.
Right.
So I've changed my question to, do you think aliens have interacted with Earth either in the past or currently, or not at all?
I think it's very possible, but maybe it wasn't, they didn't do anything crazy that it was like, we would find it and we're like, oh, this was definitely an alien here, because, but I'm not really sure. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a lot of I'm not asking any easy questions, right? Because like no one knows what happens after we die, and no one knows if there's aliens here. Yeah. So, don't feel bad about not knowing, because literally no one knows.
Any guest to ever pull out hard proof and
yeah, look what I got.
The history of aliens.
So you want to go take a ride in my UFO?
Yeah.
Like I'm an alien, actually.
I feel like I have a more complicated answer to like a very simple question, to be honest. But so like, technically, like, we wouldn't know, obviously, but I also think like our understanding or imagination of aliens is very like biased or skewed to like look at certain things as this is alien life, or this is what this means. And obviously, because we don't actually, this is something we're theorizing. We're putting a face and name to something that we don't know exactly what it is. So there's already been, like, this is not anything new, but there's already been a lot of writings or things about, like, what does our alien speculation or alien curiosity actually mean? Or, like, what does it, why is it, like, out in space where, when you really think about it, something that's very alien to you or foreign and like something that has different intelligence could be an animal here on Earth. There's a short story, and I can't remember who wrote it, but there's a short story about a parrot, basically. The parrot is the narrator, and it's basically saying how humans keep going outside of the Earth, keep looking for something that's more intelligent than them because, we think we're the most superior beings ever. And where you have this species, parrot, who has its own way of living, its own tools, its own language, its own, like, kind of community building, right? Which you could say we have the exact same system. We're just, obviously different animals. And because we can't understand a parrot and we can't understand another animal, we think that it's inferior. You know, when they also have their own tools, and a lot of animals have evolved in their own like technology basically, and how they like make their tools and how they survive. And so I think a lot of our speculation on whether there is alien life is our hubris trying to say like there's something that has to be better than us out there, when I feel like you could say that anything on Earth that is completely different from us is an alien in itself.
That's that's true. There's a lot of very intelligent animals, like dolphins are like super intelligent. Orca whales are incredibly intelligent.
Like,
crows.
Yeah.
Crows.
I was discussing the other day about mushroom, mycelium.
Yeah, mycelium is insanely
Actually,
smart.
And there's a long-standing theory that is actually the alien that landed and changed stuff on this planet. Is that it was mycelium.
I think it might have had something to do with human evolution.
Goes back to the stone ape theory.
Yeah. Are you guys familiar with this?
No, definitely
basically, long story short, missing link is apes taking psilocybin mushrooms and gaining self-awareness, basically.
Pattern recognition, they start seeing geometric patterns everywhere. And
Wow.
it starts
That's so
evolution.
interesting. Never heard of that before.
Yeah.
It's,
me neither.
and it's historically accurate because there was a smaller ice age that drove tribes of apes downward, and anytime that happens, you get hungry enough, you're going to start grabbing stuff to eat.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what they think happened, is they started grabbing mushrooms and eating, and maybe not even just mushrooms, it could have been roots, because there are certain plants that contain alkaloids, but they started ingesting alkaloids basically, and it started shaping their brain pattern.
Yeah. I'm not an evolutionary biologist, but it seems like if there are chimps and like different kinds of primates that are more primitive than us but still exist today, our evolution went off somewhere.
Right.
Like something happened to cause that change. This is one of our favorite subjects on the show, is where does human life originate? And or not originate, but kind of branch off. And one thing me and Eve talk about a lot is fire. We have the intelligence, but unlike a dolphin, we have thumbs and the ability to make fire, which is the great tale of Prometheus.
And control fire.
Right.
Yeah.
We know how to overcome our fear of it. Most all animals are.
Which you brought up crows, and crows have actually been shown to like take a burning stick and like take it somewhere else to light things on fire, which is fucking crazy.
Wow.
I honestly think that's from domestication.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
I think they learned that from us.
Maybe that's how we learned it too, is domestication.
Well,
Prometheus,
yeah.
the Greek god, came down and he's like, here you go.
Well, I mean, you gotta think, what is domestication? I always say that humans domesticated themselves first.
Mm.
And then we started domesticating all these other animals, and in doing so, we created dogs, and we created cattle, and we created chickens.
You make a good point about humans domesticating themselves, because that's where you get like the ruling class, like a monarchy, where it's like all these people serve the king, and it's like, why do they do that? Because that's what they do. They're a domesticated species.
That does actually come from pack instinct on a certain level. It comes from alpha pack instinct. But, I bring up tundra law all the time. Animals live on tundra law. There's still an archon, and there's still things going on like that in systems. There's just not all this bullshit laid around it. It's very cut and dry. It's very brutal. There's no second chances. There's no second place.
Like chimp society is like that, yeah.
That's what we call uncivilized.
Right.
It's not been turned into a civilization, a place of cities.
So you mentioned earlier about like you were trained classically, but then like around, I think you said like 12, you started to find a way to like make that your own. And I think that kind of bleeds into another question I have, which is like real artists like you guys
Thank you.
It's necessity. You don't do it necessarily. It's not always fun. It's something you have to do.
Mm-hmm.
What do you? Can you define art? Like, what is art?
Boy.
It's a good one.
Big question.
Big question, yeah.
Only big questions here. I don't do small
We're
talk.
big girls now.
We're big girls
We need
now.
to answer the big questions.
I think though art, like my initial thought, I guess, is that it's kind of like however you want to express yourself, and it's almost like a different language, I would say, because like when you speak like two languages and like one of them is your native language, that's like one way, and then when you speak another language, it doesn't feel like the way it does when you speak your native one. It's like kind of special, and distinct from each other. So I think art is like kind of a language, and
I think so. I feel like that's interesting because, like, you know, like, speaking of my own personal experience, like, it's harder for me to say, like, sentimental things or say, like, mushy things in real life, but, like, if you listen to whatever music, or words that I've written or something, like poetry or something, it's like, it's like comes out easier, you know, like it just is like easier vehicle to like express those emotions that are like you feel maybe more awkward sharing just in normal context and conversation. So I feel like that makes sense.
yeah, I definitely agree with that, and I feel similarly. That's why we're in a band.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, right.
that's why we're Sayryn.
It's definitely easier to say things in an artistic format. I don't make music, but I'm a poet, and I'm writing a novel right now as well.
Nice.
But poetry is definitely like, it's not always fun and sometimes painful, but
I agree.
it's
yeah.
necessary. I have to do that. It's an exorcism, and if you want to be poetic about it, it's like I have to get that out. Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of like, I feel like for me, like when I think of ideas, and things that I'm like, it's never just something like very surface level. It's always things where you're like thinking about an idea for a while or a concept where you're like, like I'm thinking about it in this way, or I'm creating this metaphor in my head, or I just realized this certain thing, you know, and then you have to, it's almost like a stone that keeps building in your stomach, and you just have to, you're like keep building the stone, and then you have to like, you know, like either throw it up or you're excreting the stone kind of thing. But you're just kind of like, it's kind of building, and as it's building, you're kind of learning how to shape that idea into something actually coherent. You know? So kind of like you're molding it or chiseling it.
That's cool. That was actually going to be my next question, is what's your creative process like? So it's, you have like a rough idea, and then you're kind of shaping that into something tangible. Is that?
I guess, I mean, wait, probably we should answer this separately and then maybe talk about it together.
Like
so,
how we do it together.
Yeah, so like, okay, so for me, so my base is actually from poetry, originally. And so I feel like that definitely informs a lot of how I do things. But I'm a very visual person, so I have to see in my head the thing that I'm going to write about. If I cannot see it, it's not coming out. And it makes it easier for me to then be able to describe with descriptive words, and in, you know, kind of poetic format, what I'm seeing and like the type of imagery it is. You know, so, you know, like the different almost like genres of words, like if it's more horror or romantic sounding, or ordinary words that are being used in your, I guess, lyricism or your poetry. So it kind of starts out as like a visual format, and then I feel like it's starts as something that's not, like you said, not super coherent, but you're connecting something, you know, you're connecting certain ideas, and you can kind of see it, and then once you start to constantly think about it more and more and being like, okay, where is this going? Like, what is the end goal of this? Like, is this sad, or is it happy, or is it hopeful? and once you start to add almost like story parts to it, you know, like the adventure, the climax, the resolve, you know, like stuff like that, I feel like then you start to actually get the core idea and the core picture, and then kind of going from there, you can format it like, okay, this is, you know, in this verse, starting in this narrative, and then you're continuing it here, and then what's the main idea of this whole entire thing? That's going to be the chorus. You know, like, you start to be able to then be extremely, I guess, format heavy once you're able to kind of get the picture down first.
I gotcha. It starts with an image.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For me. Saya.
So it's funny because I used to not really have like a formal process like up until maybe college. And I like did figure something out that worked for me, and usually like I think what I've always done like throughout most of when I've been songwriting is I have like this idea in my head, and it's like sometimes it's a phrase, sometimes it's like kind of like a metaphor or a visual. It does like tend to vary. But I've like always, since as long as I can remember, like I write it down in my notes app like every month, like whatever ideas I have, and I divide it up into like each month of the year. So that helps me kind of like organize everything. But if I tend to keep going back to the idea, like just in my day to day, like I'm just thinking and I'm like, oh yeah, like this, I could add this to like this song idea, and I'm kind of like letting it marinate almost, then I know I have like a good basis for a song. So then usually I try to like either kind of like free write some things down, so that I know kind of where it's going, and then something I started doing in college was mapping it out, which I learned in a couple of songwriting classes I took. So I'll decide like what format it is, and then I'm like, okay, like what would I say in the beginning of the song, and then like draw an arrow, and then write what I would say in the chorus, and the second verse, and so on. So that's really worked for me, because like if I know it's not going anywhere, like I just know during that kind of like mapping out process. And if it does go somewhere, I usually like I'll either just write the song, or one thing I learned from a professor I really love from school is like a songwriting worksheet. And that's basically just kind of like, I don't even know how to describe it really, but I would say it's kind of like your bank of words that you're using, and you list out like, say like 8 words that are related to the subject, and then after each word you write like a couple of rhymes,
and different types of rhymes too, like it doesn't have to be like wine sign, you know, like it can be like the vowel itself, or a near rhyme, imperfect rhyme, like all different types of rhymes basically.
That's interesting. I've heard people talk to me about taking songwriting classes, and that's something I've never done. I've been taking a songwriting class. I've written songs for years, but it's the first time I've heard anybody describe what goes on, because I've known a lot of college students say, oh, I'm taking a songwriting class, and I'm like, well, what are they teaching you?
Yeah, it's, you don't, I mean, you can't teach someone how to be creative, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
That's definitely not the purpose. I think it's like giving you the skills and the tools for how to format more, and so that makes you have to think differently, like within the lines, you know, I have this amount of syllables, so everything needs to be like fit in this, right? So then how intentional am I making this? And so it's definitely more, I think, oriented to that, and like almost like caging your thoughts.
I see what you mean.
Yeah.
Creativity requires confinement. If you're just looking at a blank page, that's like the hardest thing to do.
Yeah.
Once you start creating parameters for yourself, it's like it actually becomes easier.
Yeah.
I think.
Exactly. I mean, we also, I feel like, obviously, as you can see, there's a lot of steps here. There's a lot of things that people don't realize, like, there is so much...
It's a lot of work.
Yeah. And very specific things you're doing to, like, create the outcome, because, you know, I'm sure in every single other types of art, there's this kind of similar process of narrowing things down and getting it to the form that you see it as. And, you know, like, even though our style is like very very slightly, I feel like the only difference is really like the onset of the idea for us, but like together it's almost like an extra superpower because we work very well together. So what's really funny is that most of our songs stem from 3-hour-long conversations about something, and then one of us, usually me, going, this would be a good song idea. And like then I start recording whatever we're talking about, and so there's like 3-hour phone like voice memo recordings of us talking. And that
makes a lot of sense because, like you said, you do both work really well together.
Yeah.
Like it. Yeah. You don't like. You would almost think like too many cooks in the kitchen, but you guys make it work somehow. It's cool.
Thank you. I mean, we've definitely experienced other co-writing like stuff, you know, like we've definitely done that with other people and it doesn't work. Like it either really doesn't work or it doesn't work the same. Yeah. And I feel like what I really like about our collaboration is that every single part of it is very equal. So there's no one of us being like the main lyricist, the main melody maker, the main like guitarist or something. It's like every single step of the process we're both very equal, and it makes it very easy. Because once we're both, especially for lyrics, I think we take that like so incredibly seriously. You know, it can be really difficult to write a lot of songs that are very difficult topics, and like the way you're going about it is very difficult, and like just do that yourself. And so it does really help to have a second person who understands what you're trying to do and where you're trying to go, to help kind of create that, you know, like, so it's like just picking up where you're lacking.
Yeah.
You know? So.
Yeah. So this show coming up is the first gig you guys have played with a full band, is that right?
Yeah, pretty much. It's like we're working with a bassist and a drummer, but it definitely like creates a very different sound for us, like for our upbeat songs, and it's the first time we've ever done it, so
I'm excited. That's going to be interesting. How is that going, like transitioning to that?
It's been very interesting. I think I think we've picked the right people because the bassist, I think we knew before because he's like originally my friend and like he's just our friend from school, but he's like super emo music guy, like, so he makes emo music and he knows that style very very well, and so I feel like sometimes you need that kind of like specific genre experience to like add the emotion that you need, you know, in the song, because we're not writing the bass parts, you know. So I'm like, I trust, we have the idea, and we trust whatever you're going to do with that. Yeah. So yeah, it's been very interesting, and it has been very different sound, but it's very cool. I feel like during our band rehearsal, sometimes I'm just like, oh my God, you like this sounds so cool. Yeah, this sounds so cool. Yeah.
Is that kind of the direction y'all are planning on going forward? Like, or is this like a one-off thing?
Well, I mean, I think like we do want to do more band stuff, and I think we've always wanted to do that. But it's definitely very easy in terms of like, if you don't have the time or the capacity to work with other people, then we can do it ourselves, and like that's not a problem.
It's that way you're not putting yourself in a box. Like you can do singer-songwriter sets and then do like full band sets. It actually makes the project very malleable where you can fit in anywhere.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, definitely. I think having the band with like our more our harder, more emo type of songs, it does give it like a special sound that like we would like to continue. But we're definitely like proud, I think, that we can show our softer side and our harder side, because like we don't want to be one thing, I guess.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, because I feel like also like, I mean, it's also heard in the harder stuff too, but like the softer stuff, like we are very influenced by folk music, and so, you know, like being able to showcase that kind of side, and in the slower stuff, like the softer things, of course that comes out way more like easier, or like you can tell, but like it still comes in through the other stuff with the way that we write our lyrics, and maybe like melodies and stuff like that. But yeah, like we, to be able to float between the two is definitely what I think we want to do, and not just completely be like giving up on one end of it, because that would be disingenuous.
On folk music, that cover you guys did was really cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Whose choice was that?
Well, it was more so this is how it happened. The 1 week I was listening to 50s music a lot because I was like on a kick or something, and I was listening to like on the Spotify radio, and the song, the one that we would listen to is the one by the Everly Brothers. So I was like, oh my god, like this song is so cool, and then I showed it to Saya. And then we were both like, oh my god, we could totally do something really cool.
Yeah.
And
something
then
spooky.
Yeah, and like also inspired by like, because Nirvana does a cover of Where Did You Sleep Last Night?
Yeah, In the Pines.
Yeah, In the
Hell
Pines.
Yeah. Man, I love that version of that song too.
Yeah, it's very. I mean, it's
so raw.
Super cool. Yeah. So we were kind of like took inspiration from that to do that song. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, thank you both so much for being here. I appreciate it. This has been a good time. You can catch Sayryn tomorrow night at Dark Matter with Spirit Ritual and who else?
Eve's Curse.
Eve's Curse.
Yeah.
Yes.
Definitely be there. I will do violence on you if you're not, because I'll be there and I'll know. So
please come. We'll love you if you do. And
it'll be a great
of
time.
course, thank you guys. Thank you so much for
Of
having
course.
us here. We've had a good time too.
We would definitely love to have you guys back sometime to whenever you're releasing something or to promote something in the future. So
For sure. Thank you.
Absolutely.
check
Thank
out
you.
Sayryn, links below, and we'll see you next week.